Let's talk books. Hi, and thanks for joining me today. And welcome back to anyone who is subscribed to my channel. It's lovely to have you back. Today I am going to be talking to you about the books that I read in March and the books that I'm planning to read in April. Grab a cuppa and let's talk books. So the first book that I read in March was by Andrew O'Hagan, and it was called The Missing. I have read one of O'Hagan's books before. I think it was called Be Near Me. I read that a few years ago. This book has actually been sitting on my bookshelves for a lot longer than that. I don't know why I never picked it up, but I'm glad that I finally got around to it because I really enjoyed this. So this book is part memoir, part true crime, and it charts O'Hagan's family's roots from the East End of Glasgow, where there was a lot of gang violence and sectarianism, to when his parents decided to move him and his siblings to one of the new towns in Ayrshire for a better life. Throughout his childhood he was aware of people that go missing and are never found. He traces his route into journalism and his interest in missing people from cases that he remembered as a child. And so this discusses some of the Bible John murders, some disappearance of people and children from when he was a child, and also then leads on to him working as a journalist, covering the Fred and Rosemary West murders, and also just doing some investigative work with runaway teenagers in London. Despite the topic, it's not like a salacious book. It's not sensationalist, and the focus is very much on the victims and those who disappear. He gives the victims of those crimes a face, a life beyond what most people will only ever know of them is how they unfortunately died. I thought it was fascinating, it was sensitive, and I'm really glad that I read it. My next read in March was Caitlin Moran's Moranifesto. I bought this soon after it came out, but just never got around to reading it. This is a collection of pieces that she wrote for the Times and other pieces that she's written specifically for the book, because there are some pieces that are kind of specific to the time that it was written in. She discusses like David Cameron being the Prime Minister and things which obviously he's not anymore. So it does feel a little bit dated, but I often find with collections taken, particularly when they're taken from already published works and they've been published in newspapers or magazines, that's often the case. So I don't really think it negatively affected my enjoyment of this book, because I mean, I love Caitlin Moran anyway. I think she strikes a really good balance, particularly with her discussions of feminism, in that she is funny, but she will say what she's thinking, but she'll also be honest about the fact that she's not an expert, and really no one person is. Her feminism, like most people's, is evolving over time, and you can even see that as you read this book. And the writing in this book, I just really enjoyed it. Like I enjoy most of her stuff. I find her, like, she's fiercely intelligent, she's really funny, she's brutally honest about herself. She can be at times a bit facetious, but she can also be really warm, really passionate. And she touches on so many different topics in this. There's like an interview with Benedict Cumberbatch that she did, and then she'll be talking about reproductive rights, and then she'll go on to talk about how much she hates computers, or I think it was printers actually, how much she hates printers, and then we'll be discussing the bedroom tax. It's such a mixed bag in terms of topics, but I think that most of the pieces are consistently strong, and I really, really enjoyed reading this. Next up was Heartburn by Nora Ephron. This is a library copy. I actually really hate this cover. I picked this book because I'm currently going through a divorce, and it was due to my ex's infidelity, and so I was looking for books, still looking for books that cover similar topics. I'm always looking to see how other women have handled a situation, or just find, you know, some comforting words, or in the case of this book, I was looking for a bit of humour in what is a really horrible, dark time. So I was just looking for a bit of humour, a bit of identification, and from what I'd heard from other people, this was what I would find in this book, and actually I didn't. I just didn't identify with the main character, and I didn't find it as funny as a lot of people had said it would be. Like, I did enjoy like the witty asides and the quips and things that are in it, but I felt that the narrator kind of hid behind comedy in a way, and I found it quite emotionally lacking. There were kind of fits and starts of insight, but it never really went to any great depth, and it kind of had that ring of although she does say they're skint, I think in this book it does kind of have that rich people problems. Like, it's very, I just imagine like Mad Men era. I think it's actually set later than that, but it was all very kind of society housewife, if that's even a thing. So, and that never really appeals to me anyway. I mean, this is not a bad book. It was fine. I enjoyed the reading experience, but it just left me feeling a bit flat. My next book was a Kindle read, and it was Me Too, which has the longest subtitle ever, so I'll just read it off the cover so I don't get it wrong. Essays about how and why this happened, what it means, and how to make sure it never happens again. This is a collection of essays by different, I was going to say writers, but I don't actually think all of them are writers, so different individuals, including men, on the Me Too movement. And like many anthologies, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Some pieces are stronger than others, some are emotional, some are analytical. I think there's a poem in there as well. But really, this is a protest book. This is a book to make a statement at that moment in time, and so I think really that's what makes this an important book, rather than the actual substance of it. It's a bit unpolished, it's very US centric, but I think that's, you know, totally understandable, seeing as Me Too is mainly centred in Hollywood, and a lot of its perpetrators are also Hollywood based. And rawness, I think, is required when you're dealing with such a topic. So, yep, an important read, and I'm glad I read it. And next up we have Ambrose Parry's The Way of All Flesh. So Ambrose Parry is the pen name for author Christopher Brookmyre and his wife Marissa, I'm going to butcher this, Hertzman, I think is how you pronounce it, who is a doctor. I think she's an anaesthetist, and this is the first in the Raven, Fisher and Simpson series. I actually heard about it on the BBC's Great Scottish Book Club, or Great Big Scottish Book Club, and was intrigued because it focuses, it's set in Edinburgh. It's a historical medical thriller, and it focuses on obstetrics in the 1840s in Edinburgh. So I love Edinburgh. In a previous life I was a midwife, so this sounded really well up my street. I've read one of Christopher Brookmyre's books before, and you know, I liked it, so I thought this pretty sound gamble, and I was right, because I really enjoyed this. Edinburgh in this book is dark and mysterious and atmospheric, and our protagonist, Will Raven, attends some pretty gruesome births. I found him quite a strange character. He's not particularly likeable, but he's strangely feminist given the time that the book is set, and throughout the story, as you understand his background, he kind of becomes a little bit more understandable. So the main plot in this book is that there is a rogue abortionist targeting women in Edinburgh, and there are lots of bodies left in this person's wake, and Will and housemaid Sarah take it upon themselves to find out who this is. I found Sarah was a great companion to Will. She's strong, she's interesting, and I really enjoyed her character. This book probably isn't for the squeamish, but I actually really enjoyed the commentary on the impact of pregnancy on women, particularly poor women, and the discussion of the medical discoveries and developments that were going on at that time. The book got exciting as the suspects were kind of rounded up, and I really enjoyed the ending. So I'm not really one for series, but I will definitely be interested in picking up the next book in this one. So yeah, great fun. I don't know if fun's really the right word for a book this kind of dark, but yeah, I just really enjoyed this book. And finally for March, we're back to my Kindle for About the Night by Anat Talshir. This is quite a quiet, slow book about an Arab man called Elias who falls in love with a Jewish woman called Lila in the city of Jerusalem in the 40s, and follows their love story through the conflicts and separation of the city through the decades. It was originally written in Hebrew and has been translated, and it's very beautifully written. I think the translation is excellent, and given that sort of writing and the fact it is a story about love, it could be a bit cloying, but I think it's well tempered by discussion of the conflict and by the stories of the other characters. I'm always interested to hear about conflicts and things from the perspective of the people who have to live through them, and I think that's probably what I enjoyed most about this book. I'm not a big romance reader anyway, and there were certain things actually about the couple themselves and their romance that were not cool with me, but what I really enjoyed about the book was the chance to, I think, finally get my head around the conflict that goes on between the Palestinians and the Israelis, and the other people in the story, particularly Naomi, who we see her as a young girl when she is kind of the only person who knows about this forbidden romance, and then there is a modern day storyline as well where she is older and she is speaking to Elias as an elderly man, and I really enjoyed that element of the story. So yeah, a fascinating book, and I think it's one that will stay with me for quite a while. So those are my March reads, and now we find ourselves in April. What am I going to be reading this month? So I've started on my next book, which is Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. This copy's quite battered. I think I picked it up on kind of a help yourself bookshelf in the apartments we were staying in when we were on holiday in Corfu back in the summer. Someone obviously enjoyed this on the beach, but I'm about 100 odd pages in, probably not as much as that actually, and already I'm completely transfixed. So yeah, I think this is probably going to be quite a highly rated read for me. And then once I finish this, my next book will be, oh, it's right at the bottom of the pile. Her Fearful Symmetry by, I can't pronounce her name either, Audrey Niffenegger. She wrote The Time Traveller's Wife, which I read years ago, loved it, and this one sounds like it's going to be just as interesting. This story is about twin sisters who are left a flat in London by an aunt they never knew existed, on the condition that they never let their mother enter it. So that's piqued my interest straight away. A ghostly story about love, loss and identity, and yeah, I've got high expectations for this one. I'm also planning on reading Diary of a Bookseller by Sean Bithell. Bithell? I'm really struggling with authors' names today. So this is a bookseller who owns a bookshop in Wigton, which is the Scottish book town. I know they have a book festival every year. I have never ever managed to get to it. I was hoping 2020 would be my year, but I think coronavirus has got other ideas. But I have been to Hay-on-Wye in Wales and thoroughly enjoyed my day among the bookshops there. So it's a bit of a shame that I've not been to my own country's book town, but I do plan to change that. Until then, I'm going to read all about this particular bookseller's experiences. And having worked in a bookshop myself, I am sure there's going to be some bizarre stories in here, and I'm really looking forward to it. My next book will be The Silver Linings Playbook by Matthew Quick. I really hate movie tie-in book covers, but when you buy a book secondhand you get what's there. And actually I always thought that this was a completely different story to what it is. I've never seen the film, wasn't interested in seeing the film because I got it into my head that it was like a rom-com, but from what I've heard of this book, that's not the case. And actually it is a book about a man with mental health issues and how he tries to pick his life back up after being hospitalised. So I'm always down for a mental health read. So yep, curious to see where this one's going to take me. My next read will be a book that I don't actually have a copy of yet. I was going to get it out of the library, but obviously the situation has changed, but I do know that I can get it on Overdrive through one of the libraries I'm a member of, and it's going to be Eat Up by Ruby Tando, who won the Great British Bake Off in 2000, and yeah, I don't know. This is a book about food, unsurprisingly, given what she's known for, and I heard it discussed on a podcast maybe last year, the year before, and it just sounded really like a good read. She goes into lots of different aspects of food, different cultures. She talks about food and sex, food and mental health. It sounds like it's quite an interesting concept, and I liked her on the show, so I'll be interested to see what she's like as a writer. And the last book that I am planning on reading in April is Courtney Love, The Real Story by Poppy Z-Bright. I've read one other book by Poppy Z-Bright. I think it was called Drawing Blood. I'm not much of a horror reader, but I did enjoy that. I'm interested to see how their writing style translates to a biography. I wouldn't really say I'm a fan of Courtney Love, but I do think she's quite an interesting person, so I'm hoping there are some juicy stories in this one. So that is the books that I read in March and the ones I'm planning to read in April. If you've read any of them, I'd love to hear your thoughts on them, so drop me a comment below. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Think about subscribing to my channel so you don't miss any other content that I put up. And until next time, enjoy your books.